studios in New York City, this is Charlie Rose.
We begin this evening with the Prime Minister of Israel here in his hotel room in New York. We talked to him after he has addressed the United Nations and talked about his concern for Israel's national security. He talked about Iran and the Iran nuclear deal. He talked about the Palestinians, and he also talked about Syria, all subjects we want to talk to him about this evening. I'm pleased to have this opportunity to talk to him before he returns to Israel. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you, Charlie.
Let me turn to Syria. Russians have created a stronger military force there. Their planes attacked moderate Arabs. He says he's going in to prop up Assad. Tell me what you know from your own intelligence sources about what's happening on the ground.
Well, I went to see Mr. Putin in Moscow a few days ago, and he told me his goals, pretty much as you enunciated them here. And I said, well, I have different goals. You know, I will not intervene in the internal conflict in Syria. It's a mess. But I do intervene to protect my country's security. So we will not allow Iran to build a second terror front against us in the Golan. We will not tolerate the use of Syrian territory to attack Israel or rocket our cities. And we will act to prevent the transfer of arms by Iran and others from the territory of Syria into Hezbollah's territories and bases in Lebanon. And this is our red lines, and we act on them. I think it makes sense for Russia and Israel not to get back into an adversarial position that we were in decades ago. I think it's important to make sure that we don't collide. And that was the purpose, deconfliction.
The purpose was make sure that you don't collide.
Exactly.
I mean, that there's no conflict between...
Collision is exactly the word. No collision. Deconfliction is the jargon. Yeah. What a horrible word.
But how would it take place?
Well, our deputy chiefs of staff are going to meet in a couple of days, along with our military people, Air Force people, to try to delineate that. I don't know if we'll succeed, but it's certainly worth a try, because we don't want a conflict with Russia, and I don't think Russia wants a conflict with us.
Does Russia want a conflict with the United States?
I doubt it. You mean an overt clash? I don't believe it.
There's also this in this conflict. Russia has announced that they are sharing information with Iran, Iraq, and who else?
Well, by extension, Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is basically Iran's sidekick. Now, look, Assad is Iran's vassal, and I certainly don't think we should prop him up, okay? But I've not intervened. I have one goal, and that is to protect the security of Israel and prevent these attacks. I think I made it very clear to President Putin. I think it was important. But I think the jury is out on what will happen in Syria. What will happen in the Middle East?
Well, what's the worry?
What's the worry?
Yeah, as to what will happen in Syria.
Choose. You can have one of two horrible outcomes. One is it becomes completely dominated by Iran, that is going to get now hundreds of billions of dollars with which it can arm them. You know, it's giving Hezbollah right now $1 billion. Iran is giving Hezbollah alone, one terrorist organization, $1 billion a year.
And what are they doing?
And with enormous, what are they doing? They're taking SA-22s, anti-aircraft sophisticated weapons, putting them in Lebanon to shoot our planes, supersonic Yahont missiles, to cruise missiles to shoot down our oil rigs. And Iran is putting sophisticated precision-guided missiles in addition to the 100,000, 80,000 imprecise rockets.
But are you protected?
They want to hit every part of it.
But are you protected from all of that because you have the Iron Dome?
Part of it is very important, and welcome and appreciate America's support for that.
But have you shared?
But it's not enough.
Have you shared the Iron Dome with anybody?
Share it with the United States.
Yeah, that's it, because they helped you build it. But no other country. No other country.
I'll check my files.
You know better.
I'll check my.
Come on, you know better.
Oh no, I do know better.
Exactly.
We're open.
Who shares the Iron Dome? Who has that technology other than you Have you,
Well,
have you
you
given
know-
it and provided it to anyone else?
Not yet.
Will you?
Maybe. It depends.
Who might?
Depends, you know.
Well, what
think
does it
of-
depend on?
I think of...
What does it
well,
depend on?
One of the things that you worry about, Charlie, I worry about, is that if you have a proprietary secret that protects your cities against Iran's thousands of rockets and missiles that are pouring down on our heads, I'm not that eager to share that secret with those who can divulge it.
How
to
about
Iran.
sharing it with Russia?
Oh, no.
No way.
No, that didn't come up. In fact, Russia, unfortunately, is supplying Iran with sophisticated anti-aircraft batteries, the S-300, which will likely give Iran a sense of immunity. They can attack us from Lebanese and Syrian territory, and we cannot attack them. That's an equation we can't accept.
Do you have any doubt that Putin wants to destroy ISIS? He wants to join the United States and anyone else to destroy ISIS.
Yeah, so
Do you have any doubt that that's his motive?
I'm sure he does, yes.
And he also has the motive of wanting to increase his own respect and relevance to the Middle East. Do you welcome that?
Well, time will tell. I think the important question from our point of view is, does he pursue his goals, or does he let Iran pursue its goals against us? These are two different things. Iran is preparing a noose of war around our borders. Iran is placing now, very soon, 1,500 troops next to our border. Tomorrow that could be 15,000 troops. Iran openly declares its commitment to destroy the state of Israel. We're going to act in our defense. By so doing, we'll exercise our right of self-defense. But I think it's important, and was important for me, to try to make sure that we don't collide with Russia. And I don't think Russia wants to participate in those goals of Iran or Hezbollah. So it was very important to try to separate that, to parse it out. I hope we did.
The United States would like to see Assad no longer the leader of Syria. They do not know who would they like to see replace him. They'd like to see negotiations. They would also like to include Iran and other neighbors in that process. Do you have any problem with that?
Yes, I do, because I think Iran has been the source of Assad's power. They're propping up Assad. They're making a power grab there. They're making a power grab in Yemen. They're arming all our enemies everywhere. They're in Iraq. They're in Afghanistan. They're not your friend. They're your enemy. Yes, you made a deal with them, a nuclear deal. We disagreed about that. And it was a disagreement, as President Obama and I both said, in the family. But we don't disagree.
Elliot Abrams said today.
But we don't disagree.
Elliot Abrams said today that Obama has a vendetta. That's what Elliot Abrams, a friend of Israel, said.
Does he speak for the president?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Does he reflect the belief of the Israeli prime minister?
President Obama called me at the height of the debate on the nuclear deal with Iran. And he said, I'd like to talk to you about bolstering Israel's security. We can do it while the debate is going on or after it's concluded. And I said, well, let's do it after it's concluded. This is the day after. This morning I met with Secretary of State John Kerry, and we started talking about bolstering Israel's security in the face of new realities. That deal has to be, the first thing on that deal is simple. We have to make sure that Iran abides by its obligations. But the second thing is we have to make sure that we block Iran's aggression.
And
in the
how do you
region.
want to do that?
Strengthening Israel, number one. Providing it with the means to defend itself and deter Iran, but also address the larger regional
But
aggression.
tell me how you would do it. I mean, what's your strategy to restrict the activities of Iran, the so-called behavior, which was not part of the nuclear deal?
Well, number one, aggression seeks weakness. The stronger Israel is, the weaker the Iranian aggression against Israel. And Israel can be strengthened with defensive weapons, with other systems, to make sure that Iran knows that it will not succeed and it will pay a price. That's not only my view, it's the view of just about every Arab government in the region. And if you can't get them to say it
publicly
on Charlie Rose, take them to a side room and you'll hear them say it.
What will
There
they
is
say?
a massive.
What will the Saudis and the Emirates and the Jordanians and whoever else you're referring to say in the side room to the Prime Minister of Israel?
What will they say?
Yes,
or
what will
some
they say?
of them are saying?
What will they say? What are you saying their private position is, not their public position?
Well, I think they're also expressing themselves publicly about their concern with Iran's aggressive behavior. Now, here's what will happen.
They supported the nuclear deal.
You really want to get into that?
Yes, I do.
Well, I don't think you do.
Yeah.
I'm the foreign minister. I'm the senior diplomat of Israel. I have to be very
Did they not support the deal publicly or not? Did they support it publicly or not?
I think it's well known what they think.
So you're saying what they said is not what they think?
I'm saying that they're very concerned with Iran's aggression. Charlie, this is not a court of law. In the real world where we are, everybody knows that Iran is making a grab for conquest in the Middle East. Not dominion, not hegemony, all these fine words like paradigm, which I will not let my staff use. They want to conquer the Middle East. Their deputy commander of their army said, this is our order, conquest. This is our order, destruction of Israel. And everybody in the region understands this danger. Now, this danger will be increased because Iran is going to get megabucks. And I think it's possible.
You mean megabucks because of the deal and sanctions are being eliminated?
Sure.
Megabucks means what, $100 billion?
To start with.
Yeah. And how much of that will end up with Hezbollah or other groups?
Suppose 10% ends up with it. It's huge, huge money. But I think a lot more over the years. Now, the important point is we agree on this. We agree that
we being
Israel and the United States. Okay. We agree that we have to take care, as President Obama said, on countering Iran's aggression. We agree that we have to bolster Israel, ensure its qualitative military edge. The President has said all that, and I appreciate that, and I look forward to meeting with him in November. I think this is a source of agreement because both the supporters of the deal and the opponents of the deal agree that Israel now has to be strengthened in the face of these new Iranian challenges. And I think that's important.
Doesn't the record show that the Obama administration has done as much in terms of military support for the government of Israel as any previous president? Your own ambassador has said that.
Yeah, I don't discount that.
There's no question that they have in terms of military support and that aspect of the relationship done as much as you could expect them to do. Is that right?
It's deeply appreciated.
Okay, but it's right. You're confirming that.
Of course. I think the problem is that military strength is always relative. All strength is always relative.
Right.
It's relative to the new challenge that we face from Iran, and it is growing, and it is serious, and it is something that threatens us and threatens the entire region. And I think that we have to close ranks, cooperate very closely, and build the defenses and the deterrence against Iran. Okay. And there's one country that stands in the breach against militant Islam, either of the Shiite variety, led by Iran, or the Sunni variety, led by ISIS, and that's Israel. We're a few miles.
What do you mean by stands in the breach? Because of your geographical location?
Sure, and our values. And our values. You know, we fight these fanatics. And we're willing to place ourselves, you know, in the breach, as I say, and we do. And by defending ourselves, we also defend the neighborhood around us.
You think Russia came in because they saw a vacuum of leadership?
I think Russia has its own goals and ambitions, and I think there's something much bigger happening than this or that personal policy. And
what is it?
I think it's the shift of tectonic plates. I think between East and West is this malignancy of religious fanaticism, of primitive medievalism that is challenging modernity, that is rushing through the cracks. Again, these people who reject diversity, pluralism, debate, and they threaten our world. I think Iran, of the two forces, is the more dangerous one because it is the preeminent Islamic state. And yes, it's seeking nuclear weapons and everything else, submarines, satellites,
Do you
rockets.
think they will get nuclear weapons at some point?
I have said yesterday in my speech in the UN, I said that Israel will not let Iran sneak in or break in or walk into the nuclear club.
What was that staring them down that you did?
I wasn't staring Iran down.
No, the staring you down at the UN, that's what I mean.
I was staring down the UN that celebrates its 70th anniversary, 70 years after the Holocaust, in which it pledged to work day in and day out against genocide. And here the leader of Iran comes up again and again and again, including just a few days ago, and calls for the genocide of my people, the murder of the citizens of Israel, my countrymen. And practically nobody says a damn thing.
Just to accent that point, what did he say?
He said that Israel will not exist in 25 years and that every day in those 25 years, the jihadists will make life hell for this dying
What do you say to the people of Israel that...
No.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't think we just move on, Charlie. I think this is unimaginable. What is it? Did we learn anything from history? Does it mean that you can conduct genocide and express your decision to make another genocide? You not only deny the murder of 6 million Jews, but you also promise the destruction of another 6 million Jews, the 6 million Jews of Israel, and the world sits back there? Of course I
understand.
was there.
So tell me what you want the world to do.
To deny it and to help us thwart it. Not to deny it.
To deny what?
Not to deny, sorry. To denounce it.
To deny language or to deny the possibility?
Both.
But there is also this. Some say that you came to the UN to say, I'm putting the Iran nuclear deal, this is the last I'm going to say about that I am moving on to what is a larger battle against the extension of Iranian power and resources. Is that a fair statement? That you realize that you have to move beyond the deal. You fought hard. Do you feel like you lost?
Look, I think that I had to speak up. I didn't have a vote around that table, but I have a voice. And the Jewish people 7 years ago had no voice to even speak out about those who would exterminate us. Well, I do now, and I suppose if that's the first responsibility of the Prime Minister of Israel. I think that what we have to do now, and this is what I'm focused on, is the future. Number one, keep Iran's feet to the fire and make sure they keep their obligations. Number two, defend against Iran's aggression in the region. Number three, tear down its global terror network, which includes terror cells in this hemisphere as well.
Do you think that
you didn't hear me? Terror cells in this hemisphere.
No, I heard you say that. But it's not just in this
hemisphere. You think
hemisphere.
that's a spin, maybe? Or I'm not talking about concrete things? Iran is building terror cells in this hemisphere. Coincidentally, try to murder the Saudi
Well, give me your best
ambassador
example of that.
I've given it to the relevant governments.
Your best example where Iran has...
try to murder the Saudi ambassador in Washington, that's a pretty good example.
Which was thwarted.
Yeah, good.
With respect to Iran, do you believe that you have the unconditional support of the President of the United States with respect to your battle against Iran? Has the deal, the Iranian nuclear deal, changed anything?
Look, I think we had as we said, disagreement in the family. But I don't think we have a disagreement about Israel's right to self-defense.
Well, that's not the question, though. Is there any question about the President's support for you and what you believe about Iran? Are you on the same page with respect to the threat and the action required? That's the question. Do you have the unqualified support of President Obama and therefore the U.S. government?
I think we have the support of the President, the supporters of the deal, the opponents of the deal, for strengthening Israel against Iran's aggression. The President offered as much. I appreciated that. and I will discuss with him the particulars of what we need. I think it's important that we first discuss with him and the administration the details of what we see as the growing Iranian threat, supplanted by a lot of money.
And you think the nuclear
and what
deal...
we can do about it.
And you think the nuclear deal enhanced the Iranian threat?
I think the lifting of sanctions and the money that will now flow into Iran with very fat contracts will fill up their coffers. And I know they were strapped for cash. I think they were doing everything they were doing against us when they didn't have that much cash. So I expect them with a lot more cash to do, to menace us and others a lot more. And I think we have to, this is it. We have to deal with that. We have to separate between these two things. The deal has been concluded, but it has ramifications. One, to make sure that they keep it, and second, to make sure that they don't use the proceeds to conquer the Middle East and destroy my country, which I think would be not only a moral collapse, it won't happen, we won't let it happen,
there's some...
but also something that would threaten the vital interests of the United States of America.
You think anything will change their behavior? That, they say that there's a strong reform element in Iran.
Look, we'll see, right? I hope I'm wrong. But usually when you reward bad behavior, it doesn't become good behavior.
Let me close with this. This notion, two things. One, you don't seem to be concerned about Russia at all. I mean, the whole world's talking about Russia in Iran, Russia in Syria, and the military presence there, and their efforts there. You don't seem to be concerned. You seem to view Russia as your friend, and...
It's concerned enough to go to Moscow.
Well, you went to Moscow to make sure there was no conflict.
That's a pretty good...
Okay, but look, the Secretary...
It's a pretty good reason.
But the Secretary of Defense of the United States, Ash Carter, had the same kind of conversation with, the defense minister in Russia. A lot of people are having those conversations.
Rightly so.
Yeah. But you don't seem to be concerned there. You think, let them have a role, let them play a big role. They're relevant, they're a big country. They got a friend in Assad. Let them come in and be part of the solution.
Look, I didn't invite them to come in.
Do you regret that they came in?
Would it make a difference?
But why can't you say? Let us know what the Prime Minister thinks about the presence of Russia.
I don't like the fact that Russia is supporting Iran's vassal, Hafiz Assad, whose brutal regime has murdered hundreds of thousands.
You share the Saudis' view of him, you share the Turkish view of him, you share the
Turkish
Emirates' view of him?
I have a lot of problems with the Turkish view on anything these days because I don't know where they stand on so many things. But I certainly view the Assad regime as a murderous regime and as a vassal of Iran. So obviously I'm not happy with any constellation in which Russia and Iran and Assad and Hezbollah are in cahoots. But my role is to protect Israel and to protect it immediately from the possibility of deterioration. And that is why I went to Moscow. And I hope it worked. That was my goal.
You had a resounding electoral victory in Israel. Many people didn't expect it would be as big as it was. How many terms as Prime Minister do you want to serve? You're already either the longest serving or the second longest serving. Second.
Who's counting?
How long do you want to be the Prime Minister of Israel, and what do you want your legacy to be?
I want to serve as long as I think I can help protect the country and build our future.
And do you believe you're Israel's best chance to do that?
I think my role is to be the guardian of Israel.
You believe that Iran is a bigger threat than ISIS?
Yes, I do.
Do you think the president thinks ISIS is a bigger threat than Iran?
I don't know, but I think they're both threats. And, when your enemies are fighting each other, don't strengthen either one. Weaken both.
And Iran and ISIS are enemies?
Sure. They both want to have a world ruled by militant Islam, except they want to be king of that militant Islamic hill.
It's good to see you. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
Good to see you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.